Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. For the record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
For the record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning and welcome to For the Record. Today is June 1st, 2018. June 1st, the official start of the hurricane season. And as you know, we already had a subtropical storm in the area. Didn't develop into anything, fortunate. But even with what we had, some persons lost their young crop, young mangoes, young pears, or avocados, as some of the foreigners would call them, avocados. Pears, we call them here in Cayman Islands. Another fruit as well. But it is extremely important for us to recognize hurricane season is here. We need to ensure that we adhere to all of the instructions that are given, take all of the necessary precautions, ensure that you have your supplies, ensure that you rotate your supplies, especially food supplies and everything. And of course, there will be more and more talk on talk radio and elsewhere in relation to the hurricane season, ensuring that we're prepared. And once we're prepared, then after that, we leave everything in the hands of the good Lord after that. I trust that everyone had an enjoyable evening. I want to thank you, our listening and viewing audience, for allowing Radio Cayman and, by extension, For the Record, into your homes, into your vehicles, as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. As you know, For the Record is a show produced by the staff and the management of Radio Cayman, and it is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I am your host, Orit Connor, and you're welcome to join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. During those periods, our phone lines are always open. There's always someone there waiting to take your calls. If it is not that beautiful radio voice of Miss Susan Watson, it's the voice of Mr. Paul Akai, who is with us this morning as well. You can call us on our toll-free number provided courtesy of Flo. That toll-free number, 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. And, of course, if you don't like to talk on the telephone, you can email us at fortherecord. That is one word, fortherecord, at CANDW.KY. We also have a WhatsApp number. That WhatsApp number is 925-3261. We encourage you to send us a text message or leave us a voice note. If you leave a voice note, then the contents of that voice note will be played during the course of the show as well. So you heard me give out all of those numbers, and except for our 1-800 number, it is only necessary for you to dial 7 numbers. Now, in Jamaica, I believe it has changed. In Jamaica, you now have to dial 10 numbers. 10 numbers in Jamaica now. I'm going to get some comments from that from the one and only Leader of the Opposition, Mr. D. Ezard Miller, who is with us this morning. You've been doing the rounds this week as far as talk shows and television is concerned, Mr. Miller. Good morning, sir. Welcome.
Morning, OC, and good to be here. Yeah, that's a lot of phones when you need 10 numbers to accommodate them all, because there's a lot of computations. There's a 10-number street. I don't know what the mathematical formula, how many phones you could actually produce, but it has to be quite a few.
Yeah, well, tell us, give us a joke on PJ.
But I think I'm doing a political campaign, and they were talking about the benefits of the economy, and I think PJ made the comment, "Hey, I mean, things not good, man. Everybody have 2 phones. Nobody don't call. You can call yourself if you get lonely." Right? But I don't know. I see a lot of people here in Cayman. With I see you got 2 phones, see?
Yep.
Right?
One is for Radio Cayman,
Right?
WhatsApp, and mine paid for by me.
Absolutely. But I only have one paid for by me. I don't get a phone as part of the leader of the opposition benefit package.
Really?
No.
You don't get? Do you get a telephone allowance?
No,
nothing like that. Oh wow! And they talk about MLAs being overpaid here in the Cayman Islands.
Well, that's true, and well, one of the things that we as MLAs have not done well is to raise the standard of representation and the compensation therefore. I mean, I took a great beating, as you will know, in the 80s and 90s, because I was the one who advocated so strongly that we needed to pay members of the Legislative Assembly properly so we could attract educated people to it. And I was the one that originally got MLAs on a monthly salary. Before that, you were only paid a couple of dollars for each hour that you spent in the Legislative Assembly. And you got less if it was a committee than it was a meeting of the Legislative Assembly. And then they got transportation. It was a very complicated formula. You got something for gasoline if you came from North Side, which the people in Georgetown didn't get. So
and that mileage thing never used to work. It never worked out in government for civil servants either.
86 or 87, I fought very hard in Finance Committee and got MLAs put on a fixed salary, and members of Cabinet as well put on a fixed salary linked to the civil service, so they didn't move with the civil service. If the civil service got a across-the-board increase, MLAs got the same thing.
And we see in Jamaica, I think there's one member of parliament now who's decided that he's going to give up his seat. I don't know if he's going to serve out his term or what, but he has pointed out that he can't continue to run his business and give quality service to his business and also to serve as a member of parliament. And he has to drive in to Kingston for meetings of parliament, something like about $6,000 in tolls per week.
Yeah.
He isn't given any allowance if he has to stay for, he either goes back home every day, or if he decides to stay in Kingston, he has to pay for his own accommodation, or go and bunk with family or something like that. And he simply can't do it based on the salary. I think his salary after deductions was something like 320,000 Jamaican dollars. I don't know if that's per month. I guess that would have been per month or something like that. But
until you have actually become a representative, you have no real concept and idea of the amount of time if you're going to represent the people that it consumes. Just in reading, I picked up probably 150 pages of material from the Legislative Assembly yesterday alone, which I have to read, understand, digest before the 27th of June. Because it's none good of us having legislation that requires all the government entities to file annual reports if the members of parliament are not going to read them and become familiar and au fait. And it's a very expensive exercise. I will tell you that, I have some financial regrets in coming out of my medical businesses as early as I did. If I had stayed for another 10 years, I probably would have been a lot better off financially today. But on the other hand, there is tremendous gratitude in being able to have an influence on the country's development, on legislation, but more importantly, the few times that you help somebody, A couple of months ago, I helped a family, and the mother showed up at my house on a Sunday evening with a little thank you card. I was one of her angels, That makes it worth it all. And you don't do this for that the thanks that you're going to get. You do it so that you yourself can be comfortable that you're making a contribution to the country. You're preserving the country for your children and their children, and you occasionally get the opportunity to really make a difference in somebody's life. And that's what makes being a representative worth it.
I'm going to, and this one, hardly are there any times when we're prepped in terms of what I'm going to ask you and stuff like that. It's all all done on the spur of the moment. But I'm also made to understand that maybe a few months ago, someone who was the beneficiary of a positive decision in the Legislative Assembly may have sent you a bottle of champagne, and you wrote a note and sent it back to them as well.
Yeah,
I mean, you can answer to that if you want.
No, I'll tell the story. I went home one afternoon after being the only single no vote in the Legislative Assembly, which is the irony in this, because the world knows that I was the only person who voted no for that thing. And I got home, and my helper said, Mr. Ezra, this man came here and left a box for you and a card. I was, a little bit surprised. So I said, well, bring it, let me see it. So she brought the card, and it was a full case of Moet champagne and a card thanking me for supporting them in the Legislative Assembly. I looked at it and I said to her, well, who brought this? And she told me. So I went and got my raid marker, my scripto raid marker, and I wrote on it, this gift cannot be accepted. This gift cannot be accepted. It is being returned. Mm-hmm. Sealed it, card back, called my office manager and said, I have a package that I need you to deliver, and I sent it back. Mm-hmm. Because that could only be one or two reasons. It was so the person could insult me, right? And because he knows I voted a no, and I don't hide from people, Or he was doing this if I would accept it, so he could go in and claim that he had bribed me. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you have to be constantly vigilant of people who try to entrap you into things that will damage your integrity. And if it's one thing that I guard, you really want to get on the fighting side of me, as the old country music songs say, you try to question my integrity or my honesty. Mm-hmm. We're not going to get very far. Mm-hmm. And but it's what it is. And like I say, I was proud to send it back to the gentleman. Yeah.
Now, have about 1 minute, so I'm going to pose a question and we'll answer it when we come back. Bearing in mind what I spoke about with the Member of Parliament in Jamaica, and you spoke about the challenges and the sacrifices that you as legislators make here at times. What kind of mix do we need, or those qualities in a person, especially situations where, because we have all types. We have members of Parliament who still have to hold a job. We have some who don't need a job because of their financial position. You have people who want to become a representative simply because of that zeal to help people and stuff like that. So you have a mixture. I want to talk a little bit about that when we return from this commercial break. Folks, please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. And welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, Honorable D. Ezra Miller, Leader of the Opposition. We just discussing anything that has come to mind at first, and anything that falls into the conversation. We're going to get into the heavy stuff later on. We're going to talk about the amendments to our Constitution, Cayman Islands Constitution Order 2009, the amendments that have already taken place. We're going to talk about any future amendments. If we get an opportunity, I want to look at the relationship between the UK and the Crown dependencies as well. A completely different relationship than that of the relationship with the overseas territories. But we will do all of that after we return from the 8 o'clock news. Meanwhile, we want to talk a little bit about the experience in the Legislative Assembly, some of the sacrifices that members have to make, some of the expectations that have been met, and other surprises when people first come into the Legislative Assembly. They think it's a easy ride. I guess it depends on what how you approach the job.
And the reasons, the real reasons why
For
you
being
got
there,
involved.
yes.
If you got involved for altruistic reasons, which
Yes.
should be the underlying criteria, and we must have a compassion for people, and honesty and integrity cannot be overemphasized as a quality. And when I talk about honesty, my definition of honesty is somewhat broader than just stealing money. You have to have honesty of purpose, and your integrity must transcend positions you take in Parliament. The job satisfaction will come, or should come, from genuine concern and help for the individuals that you represent. Tolerance is very, very important. Prudence, of course, is equal as well. But tolerance in being able to have discussions with people who have opposing views to you.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I have tried to develop over the years is an ability to listen. Most people, right, are satisfied if you just listen, and they will take an honest response. If you can't help somebody, be honest with them. Say, listen, this is beyond my realm of authority or influence, right? This is who you need to go and see. This is what you need to do. I have found that I try to deal with people's issues when they arrive. If you come to my office to see me and you have an issue that I believe a department in government or another politician needs to deal with, I make the phone call in front of the person. Right? I don't say, well, okay, come back and see me next week, or don't come back and see me, but I can call somebody.
Yes.
And I find that people respect that, and even if you don't succeed in helping the person, the fact that you made a genuine attempt and you listen, because sometimes you got to listen between the lines to see what the real problem is, right? And you should have respect for people, in that if somebody is willing and is in such need that they're prepared to come to you and ask for help, which for a Caymanian is or DNA, that's difficult to do, to allow you to pry into their affairs in order for you to have sufficient information to be able to decide whether you can help them or not. That in itself takes a great effort from the person who's seeking the help, and you should have the respect for that person to listen carefully. Ask only for information that you need. Don't expect people to provide you for information just so you can know their business, of thing.
Yes.
And the other thing is that, one of the criticisms I get all the time is, well, but Ezra ain't doing nothing in the community. I mean, we don't see him, he does nothing for nobody. Well, that's not so. But if you come to see me or see about something, and I offer or render you aid, irrespective of what we decide that aid is, nobody but me and you knows about that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I believe that that's very important. And I think that is why people trust me as much as they might not like me, because I will tell you, I know that I am not the friendliest person in the world, but I'm a genuine person. And I think people rate being genuine and honest above being friendly and making promises that you can't keep. And pretending that you're going to do something, and you keep calling back and nothing is done, and you keep calling back and nothing is done. One of the things that worries me is what I call the changing attitude of the civil service. And you've heard me in the past say, well, I divide Cayman pre-1984, post-1984. Boy, I picked 1984. That's the year I got elected. When you went to the civil service and you wanted something done, like when you were in charge of immigration, I came to you and I said, see, I need to get this thing done. You might look at it and say, well, that's just not really right, but let's fix it, and you do the job. Here now, when you go, the attitude has changed. That when you go now, the first thing the civil servants tend to do is to demonstrate their authority. Well, you're not capable of completing this form. You need to get a lawyer to do this. I mean, you need to respect that I am an important person. And then, as long as they can tell you, they send an email, they've done our part. But what you come back to me for, Mr. Miller? But I sent you a copy of the email that I sent. Yeah, but that's not getting the job done. I need you to follow up. I need you to get this thing done. I don't need you to say, well, I sent an email and then, if I bother you 6 months later, you show me the same email.
Yes.
Yeah. So it is the completion of the task is not as important as it used to be. The completion of the task at times may be telling me I'm wrong and telling me I can't do that. That's okay. And you shouldn't be afraid to tell people the truth.
Yeah.
You should not
and tell them why you can't
explain your position.
Yes.
And I find that we need to somehow get back to and put more value on the Caymanian values that brought us through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, right? And play more emphasis on that. But the opportunity to I tell everybody that yes, I made a huge economic mistake in going in politics as early an age as I did, because I really didn't need from a financial position to get involved in politics. So I didn't go into politics. It's probably only two people who ever been into the Legislative Assembly who worse off today when they went in. And that was me and Mr. McLean from East End, right? Because if I tell people, if I was to show my dear wife my financial position in 1984 when I first got elected, in short today, she'd tell me to go commit suicide so she can get my life insurance, right?
If there's a clause in there that says you can collect if you commit suicide.
Right. But I will tell you that two things. The learning curve in terms of how a country is administered could not be learned in a university. That can only be learned from the experience in getting back to these newbies, as we call them, recently elected individuals. It would be very interesting and maybe something you can start a trend on your show.
Okay.
Of asking the questions. Is being a representative as easy as you campaigned in criticizing the person that you wanted to remove for not getting enough done? Is it what you believed it was going to be? I think if they're honest with you, they can tell you, well, no, it's quite different actually. And we now understand how things get. You got to realize,
even those who are in a position on the government side that are in a better position to get things done. We have to go to our 8 o'clock. But very quickly before we go there, one of our listeners said actually that quote about the two telephones should be attributed to the late Roger Clark.
Oh,
what PJ said was more man a drive car.
Oh, okay. All right.
And they also say 10 numbers is just using the area code when you make the call. You still got to dial 10 numbers as opposed to as opposed to 7. But we want to thank that listener for sharing that with us as well. Folks, please stay tuned. For the Record, we'll be back immediately after the 8 o'clock news. And welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, Leader of the Opposition, Honorable D. Ezard Miller. We're going to talk about amendments to the Cayman Islands Constitution Order 2009. Those amendments came into force on the 13th day of July 2016. And because there has been talk about the fact that our Constitution had been amended without any consultations with the Cayman Islands. But I think that is not factually correct. It was amended. We didn't go to a referendum on it. But to assist us in our discussions and to get a clear understanding, I'm going to ask Mr. Miller to read from a letter written to the then leader of the opposition.
No, leader of government business.
Leader of government business. I keep saying leader of opposition. Yeah, I think I said that yesterday as well.
Yeah.
Leader of government business from the then Minister of State for the Overseas Territories, Chris Bryant. Mr. Miller.
Yeah, well, this letter, as you say, comes from Mr. Chris Bryant, who was at the time the Undersecretary of State responsible for the FCO and Overseas Territories. And the letter is addressed to the Honorable W. McKeever Bush, OBE, JP, MLA, Leader of Government Business. Government Administration Building, Grand Cayman, KY19000, Cayman Islands, and it was dated 10th of June 2009. Now, there's that date is very important in that the Constitution had not yet come into effect. Because the Constitution didn't come into effect until November the 6th? Or was November 2009?
Yeah, 6th of November 2009, yeah. Uh-huh. And the elections in the Cayman Islands had taken place in May.
20, was held in May 2009.
Yes.
So the government that negotiated the Constitution changed in May 2009,
Right.
and Mr. Bush moved from leader of the opposition to leader of government business, and Mr. Kurt Tibbetts became leader of the opposition as a result of the 2009 general election. So, and I quote from the letter, "Dear Mr. Bush, as part of the constitutional modernization process, the Cayman Islands government made the following proposal." And I quote in quotation marks, "After the present modernization process has been completed, comma, further changes to the Constitution should not be made without the authorization of a referendum, comma, unless the change is declared by the Premier and the Leader of the Opposition to be minor or uncontroversial, comma, in which case a resolution of Parliament would be sufficient. The UK government should be invited to agree that it would honor this referendum requirement." That's the end of the quotation of what the Cayman Islands government, which would have been Mr. Kurt Tibbetts' government,
Yes.
because the Constitution was negotiated and settled before the 2009 election.
Precisely.
Continuing to quote from the letter, "In general, the United Kingdom government approves the idea that substantial constitutional changes should be supported by the people of the Cayman Islands in a referendum. Accordingly, the United Kingdom government would normally use its best endeavors to honor this referendum requirement. However, there may be exceptional circumstances where it would not be possible or appropriate to do so, and for that reason, the United Kingdom must reserve its position on this matter."
Okay.
Now, that position on that matter is, in my interpretation, is that the UK government can change our constitution without a referendum. They can do both. They can agree on a referendum result conducted in Cayman to accept certain changes recommended by the referendum, or they can reject the changes requested in a referendum, or the United Kingdom can decide to change the Constitution without a referendum at all.
And normally, when you reach the stage where you're actually seeking the change, it is usually after having discussions with the United Kingdom in terms of what would be
right.
acceptable. You're not just throwing something
Right.
in their lap.
Yeah, I don't think it would make a lot of sense to have a referendum on a simple question: should we change the Constitution? Right? What the normal process that I would envisage a referendum taking place is exactly what happened in 2009. The government of the day initiated certain negotiations to change our constitution and to modernize it, was the terminology that they used.
Because the UK had been pushing for years for that to be done. We had made several attempps to do it.
Right.
Got to the point where we had draft constitutions.
Right. The
and
history will show that the 1972 Constitution was amended a couple of times, but in 1992, the government of the day, of which I was a part, initiated again a review and modernization of our Constitution. That was done differently. What we did then, we asked the UK to send in constitutional commissioners.
Yes.
And they sent in 2, which was what was done for 1972, remember? When you had Lord Asquith in 72,
Yes.
and you had the Mr. Smith, the eminent jurist from the Eastern Caribbean,
Frederick Smith. Yes.
laid the 92. They came here and they listened to the communities, they listened to the elected people, and they drafted a constitution which the UK government agreed to. That constitution was sent down in 1992. And Mr. Truman, I don't care if he likes it or not, Mr. Truman engaged the then Governor Scott, right, and entrapped him in the LA to saying that although the Constitution had agreed for it, had been agreed by the UK changes, and the government of the day had asked for it, it should not be brought in unless it was subject to an election, not a referendum, an election.
Mm-hmm.
So that Constitution was rejected because there was a change in government in 92, and Mr. Truman was in the leadership, one of the leaders of that new government.
Mm-hmm.
But what they did then was he negotiated with the UK government several pages of constitutional change. In other words, he took what he wanted, what suited his purposes, out of the 92 draft constitution, right, and implemented it with no public consultation at all. Most people don't know that we had substantial constitutional change in 1993, right, which was when they brought in the lead of government business. They brought in ministerial names and stuff, remember? So what has happened here, the missing element here is what prompted this response from Mr. Bryan. Because this is not, in my view, what we are being told it is, that it was a side letter that was agreed as part of the constitutional negotiations by the PPM government leading up to the 2009 referendum on the Constitution.
And it certainly isn't a letter of entrustment.
No. I mean, basically, the man is reminding you that, listen, for whatever he was replying to, he is saying, listen, you all tried this in the negotiations, and when we were here in 2008 negotiating this Constitution, we didn't accept it then. We're not accepting it now. We reserve the right to change the Cayman Islands Constitution without reference to a referendum. We reserve the right that even if you have a referendum asking for certain changes, that we don't agree with those changes, we don't have to implement it.
Right.
So the question is that is being raised and brought up by certain forces in the country, is they are relying on this letter and also on Section 69 of the Constitution. And let me quote that just for completeness. Sure. Section 69 says, it's under the title Power to Provide for a Referendum. 69 says, a law enacted by the legislature may make provision to hold a referendum amongst persons registered as electors in accordance with Section 90. That's how you qualify to be an elector.
Right.
On matters of national importance, when so resolved by the majority of the elected members of the Assembly, but the question of whether the Cayman Islands should seek any amendment to the Constitution that may result in their independence shall be deemed to be a matter of national importance. Here's what I interpret that to be.
Okay.
I preface that by saying I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge, right? But it means that if we want to seek independence from the UK and we want to change the Constitution that forces us to set a date, and give an example. If you check the minutes, and you was there, it is my understanding from reading the minutes of the negotiation that at one point in time, the government negotiating team or somebody in the negotiations proffered the question of, can we remove the Attorney General from the Legislative Assembly and have a Minister of Justice and from Cabinet? And the English gentleman who was representing him said,
Ian Henry.
Mr. Ian Henry said, if you want to do that, that's fine, but you have to set a date for independence, right? So the fact that would trigger the setting of a date for independence, Section 69 would come in, and you would have to have a referendum, right? But it is debatable. Let's put it in my view. There's no question that if we get the two things major, that because it's four items, but it's basically two things: the removal of the United Kingdom to legislate completely independent without consultation on our behalf, as was done in the House of Commons recently.
Right.
And the other thing that the Premier is suggesting we need to remove is the ability of the governor to reject legislation passed by Parliament.
Right.
There's no question that if we get those two things removed, we have enhanced our ability to run our internal affairs under our own self-governance structure. Because again, people need to understand that when we start throwing out words like we need a self-government constitution, this 2009 Constitution really gives us full internal self-government over domestic affairs.
Yes.
The only thing that is excluded from this is those couple of matters under section, I think it's 50, where that are reserved to the governor, which is basically external affairs, defense, and security. Right?
But we still need to make it clear that even, with having full autonomy over internal domestic affairs, that the ability for the governor to, based on advice from the Secretary of State, can still disallow legislation. So one of the things that you may want to carve out is that when it comes to domestic legislation, as long as it doesn't conflict with UK
international obligations.
Obligations, then shouldn't be disallowed in those instances. There are so many ways to negotiate.
We look to put some belts and braces on it and say that if he disallows domestic legislation that is not within does not affect his reserve powers or international obligations, that a 2/3 majority re-vote in the Legislative Assembly
can override. Yes.
So we have. My idea is that we need to go and negotiate this. We got asked for it to be removed. If they won't do that, then let's look at what alternatives we can, which puts a buffer, shall we say, from them being able to directly interfere without consultation as they can now into our domestic matters.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sorry?
I'm not against a referendum, don't misunderstand me, but I don't subscribe that what we're offering to do here can only be done by referendum.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mr. Miller, and such a clear explanation of it as well. Then we look at the amendment to the Constitution that I said came into effect on the 13th of July, I believe I said it was, 13th of July, 2016. And I will just read the explanatory note in relation to it. And the explanatory note, of course, doesn't form a part of the Constitution itself. And the explanatory note reads, this order amends the Cayman Islands Constitution order in the following ways. Firstly, the tenure of judges of the Grand Court is extended from age 65 to 70. Secondly, the governor's power to exercise disciplinary control over the Chief Justice and the President of the Court of Appeals is removed. And thirdly, the power to exercise disciplinary control over judges of the Grand Court and magistrates and judges of the Court of Appeal is transferred to the Chief Justice and the President of the Court of Appeals, respectively. And then it goes on to say that the governor's constitutional power to remove the Chief Justice and the President of the Court of Appeal, judges of the Grand Court, magistrates and judges of the Court of Appeal from office is unaffected by this order. So the power to remove still remains. The power to exercise discipline over the judges, was changed in that regard.
Which is a practical application to what holds normally in system.
Precisely.
So that's a minor adjustment which makes the workings of the Constitution in relation to the judiciary much more practical.
And of course, the removal, that whole process would be done by the Privy Council. And I think we saw a similar situation with that, with what was taking place with the late Priya Levers.
Right. But it's interesting there because you see, that was done under the agreement of the Premier.
Right, yes.
The leader of the opposition at the time, right?
And the judiciary.
And the judiciary.
Yes.
They didn't follow the requirement that they were trying to get in the Constitution, which is that even though the Premier and the opposition agree, it should be by resolution of the local legislative assembly. Because again, the UK exercised its authority to not have that requirement.
Yes.
They accepted the fact that they can change it on the recommendation of the Premier, the leader of opposition, the governor of the Cayman Islands, and supported by the judiciary. And they made the changes.
Yep.
Without reference to a resolution in the Legislative Assembly, right? Or to a referendum.
Now, I've heard some persons proffer the view that the mere fact that you're changing the retirement age of judges from 65 to 70, right? And yet persons working in the public service, that is not necessarily afforded to them, that it is discriminatory in a certain way, because you're treating two classes of people in a different way, and that in itself should be something that should be subject to a referendum. But again, you're talking about the judiciary, which you have to talk about the independence of the judiciary as well.
Right. That did in fact trigger a change in the retirement age of civil servants.
Yes.
They didn't accept my amendment to the bill, but because I don't believe that the civil servant should be any different than the private sector when it comes to retirement. There's no statutory requirement of retirement in the private sector.
Right.
They use contractual agreements, and they use the fact that when you get 60, it's expensive to get health insurance for you and furl you out to the government. And then they make a big noise about the medical liability of the civil service they claim. But a huge portion of that are people who have no benefits from the private sector where they worked all their life. But the amendment that I filed when the deputy governor brought the amendment to the changing the retirement age of civil servants from 60 to 65 was that it would be an option to retire at age 65, but there was no compulsory retirement. As long as the person is willing, able, and doing the job satisfactory, there should be no magical age at which they must retire. Right? Problem is that in the public sector as well as the private sector, they use this magical age, right, to try to get rid of the people that they don't want to get rid of, or also to, not so much in the public sector as in the private sector, but to lower their human resources costs. Because if you have somebody that's been working for you for 15 and 20 years, they're probably at the top of the scale that job demands, right? Because you would assume that they're doing a good job, otherwise they'd have been gone. If you can bring somebody in at the bottom of that scale, that represents a savings and more profit. And that's what it's about. But I wanted it to use the phraseology that was introduced in the pension legislation, right? There's no mandatory retirement age in the pension legislation anymore. It uses phraseology, the age at which somebody may opt to retire, right? But the private sector has not made that adjustment in their contracts of employment. We still get people who believe and who need to work, that they can still do the job and be willing to do the job, but because of the way the health insurance cost is structured, it's better for the private sector to get rid of them by contract at age 60 and don't have the additional cost of the health insurance.
Okay. Folks, we're going to take a commercial break. Please stay tuned. For the Record, we'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I just want to remind you that at about between 9 and 9:30 this morning, we're going to also have Mr. Alfonso Wright, and I believe probably Ms. Caraco with him as well. We're going to be discussing the function that will be taking place on Monday morning in relation to the Cayman Islands coat of arms as well. So we're going to have them on for a short portion of the show to talk about the events on Monday as well. Also, I don't like to keep my listeners hanging on a limb, and on the 30th, that would have been Wednesday, one of our listeners sent on WhatsApp and said, "Good morning, OC, can you please tell me if PR and status can be taken away?" Says, "Been asking for a long time and can't get an answer." And the answer, I hope that person is listening. If not, I will also respond by WhatsApp to you. But if you're listening, just give me a thumbs up to say that you've heard it. And in relation to the loss of Caymanian status, that is found in Section 27 of the Immigration Law Revised, the most recent revision. And it lists several ways that loss can take place, because there are several ways that you can acquire Caymanian status. It's a little bit long, so I'm unable to read all of those out to you this morning. But Section 27 of the immigration law in relation to the loss of Caymanian status, and Section 33 of the immigration law in relation to loss of permanent residence, and not only permanent residence, but also an employment residence and employment right certificate as well. Yeah. So 27 for status, 33 for permanent residence as well. Anything you want to add to that, Mr. Miller?
No. And that also applies to those that are granted by cabinet or legislative assembly.
Includes
the reasons for which you can take a waiver applies to all grants of either PR or status.
Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit, as well, and let's talk about another jurisdiction. We're going to talk about the Crown dependencies, and in particular, Jersey. Before I do that,
isn't it a little bit strange that they haven't changed that title for him from Crown? Remember, they had overseas dependent territories.
And they say that it was a pejorative. Yes,
because they're no longer, I don't believe, financially dependent on the UK. Most of them are basically running their own affairs and financing their own affairs.
And one of our listeners, let me tell you, the people out there, they know a lot more than we think they know.
I don't subscribe to this thing that for these kind of things. Now we need to go on this whole educational campaign. People out there educated.
They know. And this person just had heard some comments regarding whether or not Jersey and Guernsey were part of the Commonwealth, and pointed out that indeed Jersey and Guernsey are indeed part, of the Commonwealth as well, despite the fact that there are Crown dependencies. But just like we're an overseas territory. We're part of the Commonwealth by virtue of our connections with the UK as well. Now, we have heard politicians, leaders talk about having agreements with the UK, encouraging the UK to positively promote the Cayman Islands and defend it in the international scene. Yeah. The Jersey has developed a framework for developing the international identity of Jersey. And this reads, the following statement of intent agreed on 11th of January 2006, the Chief Minister of Jersey and the UK Secretary of State for Constitutional Affairs, because that's basically where, the Secretary of State for Constitutional Affairs has a lot to do with the Crown dependencies as well, have agreed the following principles. They establish a framework for the development of the international identity of Jersey. The framework is intended to clarify the constitutional relationship between the UK and Jersey, which works well, and within which methods are evolving to help achieve the mutual interests of both the UK and Jersey. Now, they have this. Now, we have something in our Constitution, but it says that, they will, look out for our interests and
as long as it doesn't conflict
with their interests.
But there's an example of the things that we need to do.
Exactly. That is why I'm bringing it
we
out
need to
here.
sit down as part of these negotiations again now and try and get them to develop with us a similar kind of agreement of how they will defend us in the international environments amongst their peers.
Yes. Yeah,
You know?
yeah. And it reads, the UK has no democratic accountability in and for Jersey, which is governed by its own democratically elected assembly. In the context of the UK's responsibility for Jersey's international relations, it is understood that the UK will not act internationally on behalf of Jersey without prior consultation. That sounds like a nice deal. Huh?
Yep.
The UK recognizes that the interests of Jersey may differ from those of the UK. We just spoke about that in relation to the Cayman Islands. And the UK will seek to represent any differing interests when acting in an international capacity. This is particularly evident in respect of the relationship with the European Union, where the UK interests can be expected to be those of an EU member state, and the interests of Jersey can be expected to reflect the fact that the UK's membership of the EU only extends to Jersey in certain circumstances as set out in Protocol 3 of the UK's Treaty of Accession. So that relationship that the UK has with the European Union, they recognize that where the UK's interests can be expected to be those of the EU member state rather than just being of the UK itself, and the interests of Jersey can be expected to reflect the fact that the UK's membership in the UK only extends to Jersey in certain circumstances as set out in this accession, that Jersey has an international identity which is different from that of the UK.
And one of the things that we need to recognize is that this whole interdependence, right, of us with the UK our independence from the UK, the dynamics of that has changed a lot than it was in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, right? Because when I talk about setting a date for independence from the UK, I'm not talking the same kind of total severance that most of the Caribbean countries had, like I said, in the 60s. What we need is what we're trying to get and what the Premier has offered up here. We need to get more control of our domestic affairs, but there's nothing wrong with us having an interdependent relationship on them for external affairs. For instance, the one of the things that people always talk about, well, how can we afford to have ambassadors all over the world?
Yes,
in this modern day of age and the ability to communicate instantly, that's not necessary. It doesn't come into the equation at all. So when we negotiate with these people and we're trying to get them to understand the reasons we believe we need to have our identity protected and need to have more control over our domestic affairs, they themselves, by going that route there and agreeing to those things with Jersey, have demonstrated that they are amicable to further devolution of stuff.
Exactly.
Even in the UK, the United Kingdom itself, there is this whole trend of devolution from a Westminster building to Scotland, to Wales, to Northern Ireland, right, of authority. And we have the quirk that may be going on now, which may also assist us in getting more than we would normally get with the anti-abortion and stuff that's going on with Northern Ireland having agreed to legalize abortion, and Northern Ireland still not
It's
having
under
it.
UK, yes, yeah.
And people in Westminster are saying, well, we need to legislate for them if they won't do it. So the arrangements are constantly being tested.
Yep.
And people in all of the local environments. We had Scotland that had a referendum last year about coming out of the union altogether, right? So we're not...
And talking about another one again, too.
Right, we're not the only ones that believe that we should assert ourselves to get more local control. That's no longer the antithea or the way out in left field that it used to be, or right field.
In fact, we're lagging behind
Absolutely.
in terms of having that zeal to want to control
Exactly.
our own destiny
Exactly.
and our own affairs. And then
And a lot of that is predicated on the fact of what we have been inculcated with over the years, and we constantly refer to what happened in the 60s.
And not to trust our local legislators. Yes.
Whereas we have grown, tremendously.
Yep. One other point was the UK recognizes that Jersey is a long-standing small democracy and supports the principle of Jersey further developing its international identity. Those, like you said, Mr. Miller, those are the things that we need to seek to negotiate with, and not just necessarily have it verbalized.
Yeah.
Where it's said one day and it's forgotten the next day. Let's put it on paper.
Yeah, one of the things that we hear cropping up now and again is that people tend to want to compare the Cayman Islands Constitution order to that of the U.S. Constitution, which is a philosophical document which underpins all of its legislation and often overrides the ability to legislate, right? That's not what we have, What we have basically in the Constitution of 2009 is what you get when you go buy a lawnmower. Manual how to do it, You got to put oil in it, you got to put gas in it, you got to sharpen the blade. Our Constitution prescribes how the United Kingdom wants this country administered, right? And those things need to be constantly tweaked to modernize it to deal with the issues and problems that crop up.
Exactly.
So it's that's the kind of situation we're in. And as I said earlier, I have said to the Premier that I believe we can find common ground, right? I've also said to my members of the opposition, and I've said to the Premier that I do not subscribe to his Council of Elders. All of the members in the opposition will be treated equally in terms of discussion and input into anything that goes on. I believe there's some merit in having a discussion, but not trying to draft what needs to be done by having a smaller group of people who will actually do the work, right? And bring it back to the full House to have it, to get it agreed, right? Because the more people you have, the more difficult it's going to get consensus to put things down on paper, So I subscribe that it may be a position, but I wouldn't want to see it separated in any way on age, right? We might want to bring in a young buck, so to speak, right? To because they will have a different input and a different viewpoint on how things should be done. So I certainly subscribe, like I say, of having a smaller group of people look at it and try to bring something to everybody can agree or disagree with.
Okay. I think we have about 1 minute left. Now, Mr. Alfonso, here. You were saying that you could break at 9 o'clock if you want. So I want to give you an opportunity for some remarks.
My little stuff about the North Side. I want to publicly congratulate the principal of the North Side of the 8 Mile Primary School, Northside Primary School, for winning the Golden Apple Award for principals on last Saturday night's Chamber of Commerce Golden Apple Awards. I think it says a lot for the school. I think the school is really moving forward, and I'm trusting on the Minister of Education to offer the support that they promised me and every finance committee, but is often withheld for various reasons. The graduation, well, no, we can't start it. My mistake. We can't call it a graduation anymore. We call it school leaving exercise now. Is next week, Friday, the following week, Friday the 15th, at 1 p.m. in the day, which again is oxymoronic, because what happens is it eliminates any of the extended family from supporting the children who are leaving the school, because even the parents often have to take vacation, or tell a little white line call in sick to get to come to. But you used to have the thing at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the night, But it seems to people like the people who need to come to represent the education ministry and department don't want to come outside at night. It's a good place. We don't hurt you at night. right?
Okay. There's one little correction that you would want to make, and you can do it or I can do it. I prefer you. Yeah. When you stated about the post of leader
was done in 2000, that's correct.
I think it was actually 2002, not 2003.
Yeah, but it was part of what was proposed in the 1982 Constitution, that we would have a cabinet and ministers and stuff like that.
And what was happening, because they wanted to introduce the Electoral Boundaries Commission, and in order to do that, you needed to have the leader of the opposition appoint someone in the leader of government business. So that is when they introduced that leader of government business and leader of the opposition.
Yeah, the other thing I want to do about Northside is I want to challenge the Department of Environmental Health. You hear an ad on the radio that they have island-wide recycling. Well, I want them to tell the people in Northside where the bins are for Northside for the recycling, because there was some up there, but they moved them, they haven't brought them back. So I'd like them to bring them back.
Okay, folks, we're going to take.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. We're going to go to our headline news at 9:00. When we return, we're going to have Mr. Alfonso Wright, and I believe Ms. Caraco may be with him as well. Folks, please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. And welcome back to For the Record. It is my pleasure to have in the studio with me now Mr. Alfonso Wright, and he is the chairperson of the committee that is dealing with celebrating 60 years of the introduction of the Cayman Islands coat of arms. And if those of you who are following news, like to follow royalty and stuff like that, you would have seen that now, Prince Harry and Meghan, they have developed their own coat of arms. So it's still an evolving thing as far as coat of arms are concerned. And of course, we have a very rich history here in the Cayman Islands. Sometimes we don't have as much of it documented as we should have, or having access to it. Sometimes you have to go to the UK, all the way to the UK and the archives over there to find things, or some people are fortunate enough to subscribe to the Jamaica Gleaner and their archives and find a lot of things there that were published in the Jamaica Gleaner in relation to the Cayman Islands in the earlier years as well. But we have Mr. Alfonso Wright, and I did say that Ms. Caraco, and I only say that because she's normally along with him in these discussions, but she's not here this morning, and it is not because she's late or anything. It wasn't planned for her to be here. But this discussion actually has been prepared on short notice, but it is a pleasure to have Mr. Alfonso with us, and I'm going to give him the mic, and he can have as much of it as he wants, because we only have about half an hour for him to cover some of the things that are taking place. Mr. Alfonso.
Morning, O.C., and good morning, all those who are listening and watching. I'm happy to be here. We've been doing the radio circuit, but we somehow couldn't manage to get a slot in your popular show. But we're happy to be here this morning. And I know you mentioned Cara may have been here. We're at the end stages now, just before the launch ceremony, and as usual, everything is kind of tightening up, and there's always last minute things to do. And Cara has been working a lot of long hours and was at work very late last night. So we didn't expect her to be here this morning, but I'm happy to be here. I may be joined by one of our local celebrities in a short while. I won't call her name just in case they don't make it.
If you check YouTube, it might be international now too.
you never know. But I'm happy to be here, and just want to talk a little bit, OC, about the 60th anniversary of our coat of arms. This came into being in May of 1958. Was piloted by the then Commissioner Alan Donnell. It was right around that time where all the discussions and stuff were going on with the dissolution of the Federation, and Jamaica's started their discussion about possibility of independence. And so it was a crucial time for us, and I believe it was well timed. And I believe that we should be ever so grateful to the commission at the time who initiated the process. and moved the motion in the Legislative Assembly, which was then made up of Justices of Peace and Vestrymen, 27 justices and 27 vestrymen at the time. They were,
And was that a part of the whole intention there? Do you believe it was for us to start to develop our own identity?
well, I have to believe that it was good foresight on his part. There is no documentation about the discussions outside of the Legislative Assembly.
Yes.
And these are the things that we continue to lose. So you don't know whether it was his idea or whether it was an idea that came from discussions outside the LA, but he was the person to bring it to the LA. With those kind of things, we're not aware of. But nevertheless, there's no record of dissension, of anybody saying no, we don't want it, and it seems like there was widespread input. What we just can't find is our proper records indicating all of the loose discussions and stuff that would have gone on, bringing us to the point that we're at. But nevertheless, we know it was done, and we certainly appreciate it. That the process was he invited people to submit designs, and we have one design actually that we know that someone submitted, and we cannot up to this point identify who exactly made that submission. But that's part of the discovery process that we're enjoying right now, trying to find all of that out. What we do have is when the final products went to the UK, the commissioner then also solicited the help of a Methodist minister, a gentleman named Arthur Saunders, who was stationed in Jamaica but was a part of the Heraldry Society. And he then helped put the pieces together, and then that was forwarded on to the UK. 3 samples that for us to choose from, and they then Garter King of Arms did some work on it and sent those back then to Cayman for them to make a decision on one. And the present coat of arms is of course the one that was selected. But it's interesting, and we hope on Monday to be able to explain and to show people the process and what people were thinking at the time about what we wanted as representative pieces in our coat of arms.
Okay. I want you to tell us about some of the activities that have been taking place so far. We have heard comments, people say, well, we're celebrating the 60th anniversary of our coat of arms. Why did we start in the UK? And there are reasons for that, but I'd like you to explain those.
Well, yeah, there are reasons for that, but I am sometimes those reasons are higher level governmental reasons that I am not authorized to discuss. But I didn't see anything wrong with the process. We know that we are still a part of the UK. What I will say is that Mr. Eric Bush, who was our representative over in the UK, was a big part of this celebration. I did a lot of research because of where he is located on this, and was the person who were aware of the coming anniversaries and stuff like that, because we do celebrate our 60th anniversary of our first constitution next year, July, as well. And so, it was an idea that we wanted to actually get the ball rolling, so to speak, and on what I would consider a much lower level, but it quickly mushroomed into a lot of interest. And there were other issues going on in the periphery at the time, and I must say that I think that the government saw this as a good opportunity to be able to find themselves in a position where they could discuss some of the other issues at the same time and kind of kill 2 birds with one stone.
Okay, I know that you're here really to explain to everyone and to discuss, what's going to be taking place. But we have one caller, so let's take that call. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. Austin. Good morning, Mr. Alfonso.
Good morning, ma'am.
Just a quick question, and maybe I can hang up. I'll hang up and wait for the answer.
Okay.
Someone was asking a question a few days ago regarding this coat of arms thing. They're saying, since it's such a special moment and we all should be proud of it, why didn't the government not give it as a holiday so that they would get a better support, so that Caymanians would be able to come out and support, their coat of arms, their celebration? Because there's a lot of people that would love to be there, but unfortunately, due to work, we have to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
So you probably wouldn't get as much support as if if it was a holiday. You would expect a better support, that we would be able to attend it better. I don't know. Maybe just a suggestion.
Okay.
If next year, okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for that question, Mr. Funzo.
A very good question, and one that we have discussed. And I can say to you that it was considered. There were some options as to whether we should do it that way or we should have it on a already established holiday. The Discovery Day in May was a good candidate, but it's not a one-day celebration. So there are going to be many opportunities for everybody to get involved throughout the whole year. And that was where we decided that, rather than add another holiday to the calendar, we're going to be doing, having a lot of activities throughout the districts, throughout the 3 islands as well. And we're going to do our best to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to get involved. So not a bad idea, but we thought we could get by without going that route.
Okay, let's take a commercial break, folks. When we return, the conversation will continue with Mr. Alfonso Wright about celebrating 60 years of our Cayman Islands coat of arms. Please stay tuned. For the record, we'll be back shortly. And welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, Mr. Alfonso Wright, and we're discussing celebrating 60 years of the Cayman Islands coat of arms. One more caller on hold. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. Ariat. Good morning to you again.
Good morning, Doc. How are you?
Good morning, Doc.
Still here. I'd just like to remind that in 1958, when Major Donald set about to have this whole thing about a coat of arms, it depicted the political and social position that we were in at the time. At that particular time, 1958. At that time, 1958, no one believed that the Federation would have fallen apart. No one believed that Federation would have fallen apart. The only thing that was imminent at 1958 was the fact that Cayman was going to get their first constitution of responsible government. That was happening in 1959. So the pineapple that represents Jamaica, represented the fact of where we were then. At that time we were under the legislature of Jamaica. The 1861, 1862 Act that came into force in 1865 gave the Jamaica legislature the power to make laws for the peace and good government of Cayman, and that's what the pineapple represents. And of course, the turtle, and then the rope. But the problem now is that I noticed the rope is gone, disappeared from the coat of arms. So can you found out what happened and when who took it away from the coat of arms and when? Because that was one of the main ideas of the coat of arms, to depict to portray the industries and the relationships that we had, not only with Jamaica but with the United Kingdom through the lion. So I saw on the lots of comments in one media of the fact that do we need a pineapple anymore? And so if we don't need the pineapple anymore, then why did we take away the rope, which symbolizes our first industry and one of our main exports. So, are you going to put the rope back on the new coat of arms that I guess you'll have to go back now and redo new coats of arms, or do new replicas of them. So are you going to put the rope back under the turret?
Okay, we'll get Mr. Fonzo to answer that for you, Doc. Mr. Fonzo?
Yeah, a very good question, and one that I enjoy talking about. It's one of my one of the things that I too have concerns about, and I have expressed that, and I've had one or two discussions with Mr. Mark Field as well about it. So we're on the same wavelength, and I want to say that there's no indication whatsoever that anybody deliberately removed the rope from our coat of arms. There's been some, I would say, misunderstanding or confusion on what is considered. There's a pineapple on top. There is a green turtle, and the turtle sits on what some people considers a wreath or a terse. But in the beginning, from all of my understanding, that wreath that the turtle sits on was intended to represent our thatch rope industry. That was supposed to be a piece of thatch rope or coil of thatch rope. I believe that over the years, out of lack of understanding or people not knowing exactly about our history and the thatch rope, but knowing that a terse or a wreath is a natural and normal part of a coat of arms, although it bears no significance, it's simply decoration. That over the years, because we have failed in continuing to educate our people, a lot of the sentiments about thatch rope has been lost. And I think that this is a perfect opportunity for us to re-energize that thought, to re-educate people. And the discussion is there as to what we can do to make sure that the thatch rope regains its prominence on our coat of arms, that whatever we have to do to ensure that people see it for what it is and recognize it simply by looking at the coat of arms is a task that we have to somehow find a way to accomplish. Because if we don't do it now, in another 60 years when we're celebrating 120 years or 100 years, whenever that is, it may just be that no one at that time will remember anything about thatch rope. And so I think the history will not treat us well if we do not deal with this matter and do what we can do to make sure that the understanding is clear and it is easily visible to everybody. So thank you, Dr. Mark Field. I am with you. In all of the writings and stuff that has gone on, it was very clear that the thatch rope was important to the Caymanian people and they wanted it preserved.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you very much for that. One more caller. Good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Morning, Mr. O.C.
Morning, sir.
And morning, Mr. Alfonso.
Good morning.
That's very significant from an artist's perspective, because if we don't have the rope, which is our historical connection and an industry that thrived within the 1930s and up until the 1970s. How do we get into the position where it's removed?
It's not removed.
Something.
Yeah. I won't agree that it's been removed. I think it's you know what? Let me let you complete your thought, and then I will come in. Sorry.
I guess I caught the conversation where I actually turned on the radio, and I was maybe I wasn't informed enough that the thatch rope was not included. That we still have the pineapple,
yes,
turtle. Is the rope included, sir?
There is a portion of the coat of arms that we refer to as a wreath representing a coil of thatch rope.
Yes,
and
right under the turtle.
Right,
yes.
But that's where the confusion is for me. So if you're from England or America or somewhere else, you have no idea what thatch rope is. Not being disrespectful, but you understand that looks like because you see it's also in the colors of the sea in the waves beneath
blue
it.
And white.
Right. So it was. They were saying that we'll do this to kind of match it up so that it blends in a little bit better. But the thatch rope is more important to us than that.
You know, a good consideration to consider, Mr. Alfonso, and from our artistic perspective,
Yes, sir.
if we can actually have that thatch rope that goes around the crest, where it includes the island, the seas, and you know, the crown.
Yes.
But not in particular around the motto. I think that would actually enhance, perhaps, our industry. That's my contribution for today.
Yeah, thank you very much. That is a fantastic idea, and one that I think is workable. We also do have the option of simply making the wreath look like what it was intended.
Yeah.
You know, call it thatch rope. And that can be done. But yes, that is an easy solution to it.
Okay, we have one more call. We're going to have to extend your time, Mr. Fonzo, because we're getting more calls than we expected, and you still haven't gotten to the meat of the what you want to get out there yet. Let's take one more call, and then are we going to go on beyond 9:30, Paul? A little bit? A little flexibility? Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. O.C. Good morning to Mr. Alfonso.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr.
There. Good morning to him also. I agree 100% with Dr. Steve and what you're saying here, Mr. Alfonso. But I go a step further. We need to put back the tax rope. We can do it. We got to stand up sometime to be our own people. Something even with us, this coat of arms. It's our coat of arms. It's not Great Britain, nobody else. No, we know we're a colony, own colony. So, but we could take away the pineapples. As far as I'm concerned, I don't see many pineapple farms here. And we could put the schooners. The thatch rope was a long time before 1930s, but I understand what he's saying. The last year we exported in the thatch rope, I'm pretty sure it was 1970. We could put schooners, a small schooner there, replacing the pineapples. I just thought that could be done. As far as I'm concerned, that's more important of all. And still, you have your turtles, definitely the turtles there. Could maybe wrap the thatch rope around the turtles so it's more visible. The reefs, many countries have reefs. But anyhow, I just thought I'd toss that in there. I think we should have a schooner in it. Thank you very much. And more needs to be taught in our schools about these things. More needs to be taught. Believe me, I know what I'm saying. You're the school children all the while. Okay. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, caller, for that. Paul, do we need to take another commercial break as well, or no? We can go on. Okay, Mr. Fonzo, I give you an opportunity to respond to that last caller,
sure,
and then to get on track in terms of what you want the public to know.
Absolutely, and my hope, my wish here is that we have dialogue on this, that we have a discussion and open and let people speak and tell us how they feel about things, and it is up to the people at the end of the day, but our aim is to encourage or some open discussions about this. I have to agree that our educational aspect have been lacking in making sure that this message has been passed on. And part of our program is to make a concerted effort to reach a point where we have an education element to this that goes on beyond the celebration.
Yes.
That becomes a part of curriculums. There's already a lot of work ongoing, kind of behind the scenes, but the government has made it clear that this is what they want, this is what needs to happen. We continue to let these things slip and slide away, and before we know it, nobody knows anything about where we came from.
No history. Yes. Lost.
We just don't place a lot of importance in recording things like that. So we hear you, but we are on top of it. Trust me. The ceremony takes place on Monday morning, right here and in this area, right next to the old government administration building, the glass house on the lawn on the east side there. We thought it proper because this is there's a lot of activity going on here. This is the seat of the government. It is also the site of the original government administration building. It's Radio Cayman is right here. The old hospital was just across the street. One of our national heroes, Mr. Armand Pannon, lived just a few yards. The police station was always here. It's really a nice
the wireless
station. I could go on. Mr. Vassell's family right next door, Miss Gleda's school, Triple C. There's so much stuff. Pardon the ground.
Mr. Carlin Nixon's house.
Yeah, it's so much rich history in this little area. Well, see, you and I could probably go on for another half hour calling names about the the historical sites and stuff that were here. So we set a date for the 28th of May, and the government decided that we know we were in arena season, but we can't change May. So we decided if it rained, we would just set another date. We would not move it to another location. That was a decision that was taken. Some people asked that question as well as, why didn't you have another possible location? They wanted it here. So we're hoping that we have good weather on Monday. We're encouraging everybody to come out. It's going to be a really tight, concise program. There are things that we have to say, but we're not going to make it a long, drawn-out process. There are going to be a lot of things to see, a lot of things for people a lot of information for people to share. There's going to be some food served. The Lions Club of Grand Cayman is doing a little breakfast for us that will, of course, be free. Keeping that simple. And we have sent out quite a bit of invitations to individuals, but the invitation is open. The entire island is welcome to come along. We have a nice little choir of 6 to 10-year-old kids that are going to be on the program, about 42 of them. That's going to be a special treat. And we have some news about our Beloved Isles Cayman. There's been a professional production of that now, and that will be announced as well.
I hope they're going to announce also that the writer of Beloved Isles Cayman is going to be made a national hero at some point in time. I hope that is going to take place.
I believe the entire country is waiting and want to see that.
Yes,
Mr. Connor. So I believe at some point or the other in our lifetime that will happen. But I will say that the work that has been done on the national song has been done by the writer's family.
Okay.
So I want to say this. There are some people who have complained about not getting invitations and so on, and we have sent this out from a newly created email address, and because your system may not be used to it, some of your stuff may have gone to your spam mail. So I need to ask you to just check your spam to see whether your invitation is there. But don't depend on an invitation. Come,
yeah.
Come.
Crash the party.
That's exactly right. Come spend some time with us. I know it's in the morning. It's a work time. The other thing I want to say is that we are in need of volunteers for the entire year's program. So you can go to celebratecayman.ky and sign up through our website and let us know, you're interested where you would like to help us. But my main thing today is to encourage people to come out, to come and share with us. Two important aspects. Again, Mr. Connor, is that the legislature and the justices of peace and the vestrymen at the time, we have two of those members that are still alive.
Oh.
And one of them is Mr. Lindbergh Eden, and the other one is Captain Owen Farrington.
Okay.
And Captain Owen Farrington is actually going to be having a small cameo appearance in the program.
Great.
So we want to thank them and ask people to, just show some appreciation for those gentlemen, because they were part of history making for us. And a more lighter moment, one of the gentlemen that submitted a design for the coat of arms was a gentleman named James Ford, who was the developer of the Cayman Islands Yacht Club. which
now the wharf.
Now the Wharf. Went from a yacht club to Port Sacal, now the Wharf. And we all remember Mr. Willard Bodden from down that area. His son...
Foxy was his nickname.
Fox, that's right. His son, Jimmy Ford Bodden, was named after this gentleman.
Yes.
So I'm just saying that this gentleman was not from here, but he came and he made a contribution. And it was obviously respected for a Caymanian to want to name their child after you. You must have made some sort of a positive impact.
And because of the proximity too, I'm sure that, that Mr. Willard worked with Jimmy Ford down there.
More than likely.
Well.
More than likely. So this is us, we come from many different places, but we somehow found a way to coexist and to be able to make a good life and some really interesting memories along the way. So come out on Monday morning, see what's happening, but there will also be other occasions as we go along throughout the year for people to partake.
Yep. Well, I want to thank you very much for that, and it is important that we continue to celebrate our heritage, our nationality. Well, I say that nationality guarded, but at least, our heritage and our history, because it is so easy for it to be, forgotten. And, we need to make sure that Caymanian people hold Cayman up, be proud of what we have achieved and what we want to achieve as well. So I want to wish you, much in your endeavors. I know you're quite capable, of doing this. As a matter of fact, I'm going to stick a little pin here and say that, at one point in time, you were also involved with the creation or possible creation of a national identification card. And at some point in time, that got dropped. And if the government wants some advice, unsolicited advice from me, is that we should continue down that path and let you play a role in that as well, because you started out with that, so you have some institutional knowledge in terms of where we got with that as far as so far as well. But I want to thank you very much. I want to thank our listening and viewing audience for allowing Radio Cayman, and by extension, For the Record, into your homes, into your vehicles as we traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. I also want to remind you that we are brothers and our sisters keepers. There is always someone out there who's less fortunate than we are, and I ask you to extend a helping hand to them. If you can't do that, then I suggest you donate to a worthy charity, because we always want to consider those who need, not necessarily those who want or those who crave. I say to you, have a great day. Continue to support your radio station, Radio Cayman. Join Sterling, Dwayne Ebanks at 12 noon for Talk Today on Monday. We're scheduled to have the governor of the Cayman Islands, Mr. Anwar Chowdhury, here on For the Record as well. I have no indications that because of the celebrations afterwards that schedule will change at all. So it is our expectations that the governor will be in For the Record. We'll be talking about disaster preparedness as well. So we want you to listen in, want you to participate as much as you possibly can in the conversation as well. And we never end this show without saying we ask the good Lord to bless these three beautiful, wonderful Cayman Islands.